Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So glad that you're here. I hope you had a wonderful week. I hope it was something that could help you out and something you could discover and begin a journey of healing, and start seeing ways that you can apply this to not only animals, but just your life in general. So we're really hoping that this is something that's going to take people through times of difficulty. And the first Zoom was excellent. And we're just hoping that we can continue on that. So with that, that's my part. Welcome. And here is Nancy.
Cindy, I heard you did the homework last night. Did anybody else do the homework for the week?
I did.
Leanne, good.
I did
very
too.
good.
I think I kind of shared a little bit about what has happened in this house in the past couple of years. And I got 3 of the letters written. I thought it was
good.
interesting. It wasn't grief like you think about grief. I mean, I don't know. It was just really different, but it was very therapeutic. So I need to get the last 3 done, but that was a great exercise.
Good. Did you feel somewhat better afterwards?
Yeah, so the thing about the uncle that died, it's all back in the news again. They finally arrested the guy that was the witness, blah blah blah. Anyhow, I found out I was just really angry about that I'm kind of through the sorrow. I don't even have words for it anymore. But yeah, and then one of the horses that I lost in 2022, and then I had 3 little kitties that I lost, and I did him too, and it was interesting. I had a lot of grief over the cat, but I was very kind of okay that the pony was 28 and she had a whole litany of things going wrong, and it was like that was a release to have her gone. So it was interesting when I started writing stuff down and really thinking about it. Apparently grief comes in all shapes and sizes.
It does. Yeah, no 2 people are alike and no 2 grief experiences are alike. Because the one we love, they're different. Each one's a different. So we have a different experience, different relationship, different type of grief, different shades of grief, if you will.
And they seem to come at a different time in our lives where they play a different role. To me, it's something I've been thinking about. It's not just, oh, it's a dog, it's a dog, it's a dog, it's a cat. Oh, I spent more time with this dog or less time with that dog. It's also where in your life were you in that span?
Yeah, very true. Leanne, do you have anything you want to share?
Well, I'm gonna just cry. I was surprised how much I was still grieving, because I literally broke down completely, which I hadn't done in months and months and months. So I was surprised. And I think I felt better afterwards. I got over it, but I was just surprised. I didn't think it hit me that hard.
Well, that's part of the therapy. The therapeutic effect of it is that you do get emotions out. Whether you knew they were there or not, they come out. And yes, as I said, you will cry normally, but it's okay. And then when you read it to your beloved one, then you're going to cry again.
Well, that's when I read it out loud.
So. Yep.
And the reason I waited till last night is because every time I thought about it, no matter where I was or what I was doing, the tears would come. And it's like, okay, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I don't want to do this yet. And then it was like, okay, I had to work all day today. So last night, ready or not. And yeah, it was a total breakdown right before going to bed. So I'm right there with you, Leanne.
Well, I'm proud of you guys for doing the homework, because it's another thing that's not really easy to do. But if you sit down and do it, It's very therapeutic.
Yeah, and Cindy, that's something that we're gonna be talking about today. There's a name for that. And I find that very interesting where you're like, you're not quite ready yet, you know? So we're gonna talk about that today and we'll get your feedback on that. It'll be interesting.
Very good. Yeah, the first letter I did was in my grief recovery specialty class. And the instructor gave us, I don't remember, an hour and a half to write our letter. And so that was, part of the homework in class was to do that. And yeah, it was very emotional. I thought I would touch on what we covered last week. One is that, as we said, the grief that you feel is normal and natural. It's a response to the loss that you've had. And it's okay to cry. And it's okay to cry here with us because it's a safe place to cry. And it's also hard. The grief is hard. But we have to feel the pain in order to heal the pain. And so it's part of the journey that we walk. And everybody grieves differently. Everybody has a different timeline. There's no magic. Oh, after a year, you're going to be over it. Well, no, that doesn't happen. And time doesn't heal. It's what you do with the time that does heal. It's just like the letters you guys just wrote. That's part of the action. You have to do something with the time. And we said that intellect, which is left brain, doesn't help. It's the right brain, which is the heart and emotions that do help you heal. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink your grief. Just, you have to feel it. And then there's the brick wall we talked about, where you sometimes can talk about it or feel about it, but you can only go so far. And then you hit a brick wall and you can't go any further. But then the next time you think about it or talk about it, then you normally can go a little bit farther. And it's like taking a brick down out of the wall every time. And then pretty soon the wall's gone and you're free. I mean, you still hurt, but you're free of all your emotions, and you recognize them and you acknowledge them. And of course, our intent here is to help you heal, to help you walk your grief journey, to give you pointers and understanding of what you're going through. And we welcome any participation. If you want to say something at any time, just raise your hand or just talk, unmute yourself and just talk. It's okay. I also wanted to cover some things that we were maybe taught as we were growing up. And the one is that, don't feel bad. You're not supposed to, even though you're hurting, you're not supposed to feel bad. Well, doesn't happen. Your parents or whoever was the responsible adult, so to speak, just squashed your emotions to where, oh no, I'm not supposed to feel that way. And then don't cry, stop your crying or we'll give you something to cry about. A lot of us were raised with that. So no, you can't cry. Can't cry anywhere. Men especially weren't supposed to cry, boys. I think we ladies had a little bit of latitude, but still it only went so far. And it's like, oh, just shut up. And another thing was we were taught to grieve alone. Of course, that ties in with the things I just mentioned. Our emotions, the way we felt, weren't welcome. We weren't supposed to talk about them, so we learned to grieve alone. Well, that doesn't help. I mean, sure, there's a time when we need to be alone with our grief and to work through it. But it also helps to talk with people, to talk with somebody that you trust, that will accept the way you're feeling, that won't criticize you for your feelings. And that's part of where support groups help too. Then just give it time. We talked about that already. And be strong for others. You're supposed to be strong, especially as an adult. You're supposed to be strong for others. Well, no, this isn't that time to be strong. It's okay to show your grief and your weakness, if that will, because it's a time to teach kids and other people that it's okay to be sad and it's okay to grieve. Another thing we were taught is just keep busy. It's a distraction. Just keep busy. You won't be able to think about your grief. But at the end of the day, there's still a hole in your heart and you're just tired because you've been busy all day.
Yeah, I think there's so many like really strong nuggets of information and everything that you just said, Nancy, because I think about, you say, don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about. I didn't hear that growing up, but I did hear, crying about it isn't gonna help. Okay, so that goes back to the, intellect, right? You're trying to be rational about it. Crying isn't gonna help. Actually, it might, thanks. And then also, we talked about this right before we started this, that a lot of times parents don't know how to handle the grief themselves. So having the kids upset about something makes them uncomfortable and they don't want to do. So what they do is say, don't cry anymore because they don't know how to handle it. So it's hard to help kids handle situations that you don't know how to handle yourself. So you can see some of those things that you say play out in different scenarios. And now that you've made it specific, I'm definitely going to be able to, even if I do it myself, I'll be able to catch it faster and be like, oh no, definitely, we can be sad about this for a while. My daughter, she makes like little things for her dog that died. And she made a cross and she painted the cross, the dog's name, and she had like a little treasure chest for her. And, I thought it was also interesting, and I don't know if you got a name for this. I sometimes feel guilty that I don't do that.
Oh,
So I had to put my horse Tanner down. And so, that saying, no good horse goes to heaven with a tail, right? So I
right.
cut his tail off because he's a good
Mhm.
horse,
Yep.
the hair. And I braided it and I had it all nice and I kept it. And it was just sitting there and I was like, I came to the realization, it's like, why am I keeping this? It's not for me. It's because I know that people who grieve in a certain way do that and keep it. So it was like guilt that I had about being okay with letting him go, kind of like what you were saying, Wanda. Like he was 28 years old and his hind end was hurting, and the pain that I had watching him struggle was far beyond the pain that I had letting him go.
Right.
So but I was like, I braided his tail and cut it off because I know I'm supposed to, because he was a great horse.
Right.
And then it was just sitting there and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I finally just tossed it. Like, I don't have to feel guilty about not wanting to keep his tail, So I tossed it. But that was just kind of a weird thing I noticed too with grief. It's like, gosh, it's like got a control over you somehow.
Yeah, some people well, I know a lady that makes jewelry out of the horse's tail or mane. She does beautiful work. I've never done that myself. One of our mules died at the University of Missouri, and they cut his tail off and washed it and braided it all pretty. And I still got it on the shelf, but I don't do anything with it. And I've saved fur or some hair from my various animals, and I actually ended up burying it even after the fact. I mean, burying it on their grave. Some of them I remember to put it in with them, and some of them I thought, well, I still got it. Ran across some the other day. But I will go and bury it in their grave. That's just me.
And
So
I didn't understand that. I have a neighbor gal. Geez, I've helped her with 4 of her horses since in the 7 years that have passed away, and helped her just support or bury or whatever. And I remember the first time, and she's there and she's cutting his tail off, or a chunk of the tail hair, and I'm thinking, geez, if I want hair for my horses, I'm keeping it when they're alive. I didn't know about this until probably 6 months ago. I saw a little meme or whatever about, it's a good horse if it doesn't have a tail. And I thought, oh my goodness, I just couldn't imagine cutting it off when they passed away. I like those trinkets from when they're alive. So everybody thinks of those things differently.
Right. Yeah, the
Right.
University of Sarah didn't even ask us, they just did it, you know, because I guess they thought it was a good thing to do. And it is nice, but it's on the shelf, you know, and they're in the bookcase.
When Hawk was our first horse who passed away after we lived down here in Arkansas, and I was away when he passed away. I was on a business trip. But I asked my husband to give me some of his tail, but I just wanted it. I wasn't there to say goodbye. But I did have a friend make me a hat band. And
Oh.
whenever I did my Pirelli levels, I always wore that hat with that hat band. And then I had another friend make me a pair of earrings, which I always wore when I did a Pirelli level test. So it was kind of a, I don't know, just a ritual I did, and I still have them. The rest of the tail, whatever I didn't use for those two purposes, is gone. But for me, it was just kind of a good keepsake. I enjoyed it. So.
It's a lovely idea. I like that a lot.
My husband is a farrier, and sometimes when you're at a place, you just kind of have a feeling that this is probably the last time you're going to see this horse, because he does a lot of therapeutic shoeing on older horses. So when the owner isn't really paying too much attention, I pick up those hoof trimmings and throw them in the box. When we get home, throw them in a baggie, label them, and put them in the freezer in the barn. So I have a whole thing full of feet, and just, I know, not normal. But as these horses have died, we've taken that. There's a couple places where you can send the hoof off and have it polished, I guess it would be, into like a little nugget about the size of your pinky fingernail. And then you can have that inlaid into earrings or a bracelet or whatever. So on his very favorite clients, we that's what we do. And then they typically get another horse, or their second string horse comes up, and the next time they're in the rotation, we take a little box for them. So I thought that was kind of cool, because I might take a little bit of tail hair, but I don't take their tails off. And in fact, where we have these last 3 buried, that was my specific question, was because horsehair is worth a lot here, and they have a horsehair braiding project at the prison, and they always need horsehair. So there's regular tail theft around here. And that was one of my questions, was if we bury these 3 together, do you not let people in there to cut the tails off? And it's at our veterinarians, and he's like, yeah, nobody's back there. So if you want them to go with all their stuff, they're going with all their stuff. So anyhow.
I was going to touch on this later, but since we're talking about mementos, I can still talk about it later. But like, you can make jewelry that have the impressions of your horse's hoof, or a nose or a paw. So I've gone ahead, and after the farrier's visit, I put lipstick on Bunny's hoof, you know, nice, smooth. And then I said, put your foot here on a piece of paper. And I sent it in to the jeweler, and I kept a copy of it, and they did it precise, all the irregulars and everything. So I have her on a piece of silver jewelry. Now she's still alive, but sometimes you need to do things, these things ahead of time, because you forget them at the moment of death. And also my little dog Dolly, I might seen her nose, you know, she's looking at me. So I got her nose imprint and have a pendant with her nose on it. Those are things you can do at the time, or do it ahead of time. You know, to me, it was important to do it ahead of time. And, you know, they're just 2 very important creatures in my life. So, and I'm thinking, oh, I wish I'd done something for Jetta, but I didn't, so it's too late, you know. But I have some hair from Bunny's mother that I sometimes carry in my pocket, thinking when I'm working with the horses, thinking that she will help me, because I think they're still around. And maybe she'll help me teach, something. Anyway, that's me. Okay, let's talk about, I really appreciate you guys sharing like this. It's awesome. We learn from each other. I'll start talking about the 4 types of losses. There's the primary loss, which is the actual physical loss of the pet. It's a physical loss. It's the deprivation of the intimacy that we had with them. We lose companionship, laughter, humor, hugs. We formed one of the emotional bond that is the strongest and most important that we'll ever have. It's nurturing. It's a nurturing bond, and it's gone. The second is a secondary loss, which is a loss of shared activities and routines. It can also involve the loss of the relationship with your veterinarian and with their staff. I mean, if that's like the only pet you have, and then you don't see your vet anymore. And yet, to some of us, they've been a very important part of our lives. And the staff, we get to know the staff too. And sometimes it gets into the 5 emotions of grief, but sometimes we get mad at them. But I'll talk about that more later. And this is one that sometimes lasts longer and reoccurs. We had a sales rep down at work, and his dog had died, and he was talking to me about they used to go for walks all the time, and he really missed that. So I told him just to take her leash, the dog's leash, and go for a walk anyway. And sometimes you can substitute that way, and it's still meaningful. I told you last time about my dog Linessa, where my life was wrapped up with her, with cooking for her, feeding her, doctoring her with the pills. She went with me everywhere. And all of a sudden it's gone. And I was really lost because of not only her physically, but because of the routine and the activities that we shared. Sometimes people will leave like the water bowl. I know a man that the water bowl still there. He fills it every day, and he's been doing it for years because it's important to him. And people maybe don't wash their beds or their blankets. I had a cat that I didn't wash his blanket for probably 8 years. I mean, I've still got it. It's still on the shelf, but I couldn't wash it. And that's okay. And we talk about, some people are inclined to gather up all the things, the food bowl, the water bowl, the beds, the toys, everything, and put them away. Well, throw them away. But I don't recommend that. Put the best ones, so to speak, at least put them in the closet or something where you say, oh my God, I really want that bed out here. That you can, and it's not, oh no, it went in the trash. Because it's the instant, the hurt. Maybe you don't want it there to remind you, but later you might value that bed or that water bowl or whatever, that toy, a special toy. Then there's the ambiguous losses where you truly don't know what happened. It's a loss that leaves questions. Either your pet was lost or was perhaps stolen. Somebody left the gate open, like for the dog. Or you go out and your horse is gone and you find the fence has been cut. Or the gate's still open, but you closed it, but your horse is gone. And you can't find them. Then that's really an ambiguous loss. You do not know what happened. My little mule Elmer, he died in September of 22. I don't know why he died. He was only 18. He was fine one night, and he was a free range mule. He was little. He would get through the fence. He learned how to climb through the fence, and he'd be out in the yard or wherever eating grass. It really is greener in the yard than in the pasture a lot of times. But he was gone. Well, we did later find his body, but he had died, and I have no idea why, unless he got into a poison flower. But still, I don't know why he died. And I had inherited from him from my sister when she died. So that's a double whammy. We'll talk about that later too. But well, actually, that's the next one, the symbolic loss. When your pet, your dog, your cat, your horse, your mule has a special relationship. No, you're connected to another special person, time, or place in your life because of this animal. Fortunately, I had grieved my sister. I'd done that, but still, to know that he was her mule, and now he's dead, and I don't know why. It's really hard. And if your prior losses haven't been reconciled, then this loss is going to be not just doubled, but quadrupled, multiplied exponentially. Say that your husband died and you still had his hunting dog, and then the hunting dog dies. If you haven't grieved your husband, then it's going to be way worse when his dog dies, because that's maybe your last connection to him. Or your son was in the military and he left his dog with you while he went overseas, say to Afghanistan, and he gets killed. And all you have then is his dog. The living thing, you have his dog. And then when his dog dies, it'll take you right back to your son being killed. If you haven't reconciled, if you haven't accepted and come to a resolution on your son's death. So, that's another reason it's important to walk your grief journey. So when you do have a symbolic loss, it's not, it's, like I said, it's not only doubled, it's just multiplied tremendously. Then there's Elizabeth.
I think Nancy, how many of us have experienced someone who either themselves or their own horse has died because of colic? Colic is such a big, it's the number one death reason for death in horses. And it's always, don't we always kind of go like, why did they colic?
Yeah.
So it kind of fits into that ambiguous loss where you don't know. It's like, why, that they died of colic, but it's like, why? They've done the same thing. They didn't get out. They didn't have a change in feed. They have plenty of water. It just doesn't make sense. Or, when they have those catastrophic colics, comes out of nowhere, it's super, super hard and they have to put them down right away. Everyone always says like, why did that happen? And you never get answers, right? Because you never know. Colic is just wild. And, you think you have ideas on why it happened, but you can't prove it. And it doesn't help you with other horses because it's so random.
And my horse Jetta, who died in September of 22, we really don't know why she died. It was something, all I can say is something inside of her. We were actually on vacation, which we'd had a couple teeth removed from her a few days before, and we thought everything was fine. And, our barn help was all set up with the medicines and they knew what to do. And then my niece, who works here 2 days a week, she showed up and was like, whoa, something's wrong here. So she took Jetta to the vet. Anyway, she literally died in the trailer going to the specialty veterinarian, which they were gonna, see what was going on inside of her. So not only did she died, she was alone. I wasn't even there, and I didn't get to see her before she was cremated. And anyway, but the fact, I'm probably still not over her. I need to write a letter about her, completion letter. I haven't, but we don't know why she died, except it was something inside. She was anemic at the end, and so whether she's bleeding internally, blah blah blah. Anyway, don't know why she died, but she did, and it really hurt. Now, as I gather myself here, I can go on to the 5 stages of grief if we're ready.
Before you go on, you can recover. I'm going to share. This is part of my letter, but 2 years ago, well, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before, we ended up with really horrible weather here. It was really cold and our furnace would not kick on. We run wood burning stove most of the time, a furnace. So we have wood for heat for the house, but because the furnace wouldn't come on, we couldn't leave the house. So my husband stayed home to take care of the house, and I went to Christmas by myself with my family. Anyway, the dog stayed home with him, and we were somewhat happy because the dog would have had to be by herself outside, and it was really extreme weather. But we were going to try to make it as comfortable as it was. But she got to stay with him. So I was gone for, I think, 4 days. And when I came back, I could tell her stomach was very distended. And so I called the vet and I took her in the next day. And she died on my way home in the car with me.
Yeah.
So then it was, the doctor had said, I had to pick up some stuff in town. And it was, when you get home, give her this medicine. Her stomach, he said it was just really like an infection in her stomach. It was really distended. And he said, when you get home, give her the medicine. I stopped to get chicken and rice because she needed to change her diet. And I needed to get a pill crusher because I had to, so I had like errands. Well, I guess I didn't think in my head, we live, I was over an hour from our house because we were in town. And so then I think, well, I should have given her medicine, before I left town. But I just knew halfway home, I just knew she was gone because she was in the back seat and I couldn't hear her breathing. But I just felt like I failed her, that I should have done something, in town. I didn't even, I just didn't think that she was that close to being gone.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that with the 5 stages of grief. I mean, I woulda, coulda, shoulda, we blame ourselves when usually it's not rightfully so. But we don't want our pet to be dead. So we think, well, if I just done something else, that my pet would still be alive. So I'm sorry that happened to you, Leanne.
Thank you for sharing that with us, though.
Yes. We could get into all kinds of stories here and use the hour up. I mean, that'll be okay. But I think I'll go ahead with the 5 stages of grief, and we'll touch on some of these things and hopefully be a cause for more discussion too. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with the 5 stages of grief. And a lot of psychologists, sociologists, whoever, don't agree with what she said. But one thing I know is there are definitely 5 emotions of grief. So that's what I call them. And they can occur in any order, and they may reoccur. Of course, I got to tell them in order, or have an order to tell about them. But they can occur in any order and reappear again. The first is shock and disbelief. It's I don't believe this happened, that my dog died in the car. My horse died in the trailer on the way to the specialty vet. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. It's just we're in shock because our pet did die, and it's hard to believe. There's disbelief involved. And then we have an inability to concentrate, to take in information, to make decisions about anything can be greatly diminished. And being in shock and disbelief is actually a gift. It's a coping mechanism that helps us absorb the pain of the loss. And it lets us absorb it gradually, slowly. It's actually like a temporary anesthetic where maybe physically or emotionally numb. But it's the mind's way of protecting itself, because we do feel it, and the mind, the right side, is emotions, and it's actually protecting ourselves by feeling that way. Sometimes we'll even have amnesia. We literally can't remember things that happened right then, either as part of the pet's death or what happened right after. You just can't remember. And then as we said, the normal patterns of living are broken. You may have had a special routine with that horse, even if it's just feeding her twice a day. It's still all of a sudden the stall's empty or the feed pan's empty. I mean, there's no horse there. I had, this is kind of off the deal, but I'd opened Jetta's stall a few days ago, a couple weeks ago. And when I let Bunny in, then they just go right in their stalls, No, she went over to Jetta's stall, went in it, stood around, looked around, then come out and went back in her stall. I mean, it's like, where'd she go? Well, she knows because I talk about things. But it was just really strange that she had to go in there and look, not once, but until I closed it, she'd go in there every time. Anyway, let's talk about routines. Jetta's supposed to be next door to her. She knows that, but she's not there. But then we don't have any other routines to carry us through. I mean, yes, if we've got other horses, we've got other dogs and cats, then we still have to take care of them. But the routine involving that particular pet is gone. And we miss it. And we also may be going through separation anxiety from, not having that horse or that pet anymore. The second stage is normally anger, guilt, and regret. It's a temporary response to an overwhelming sense of frustration and outrage. Anger is a form of protest. We people like to be in control. And when our pet has died, we've lost control of the situation. There's nothing we can do. That's the way it is. And sometimes that anger makes us want to lash out at people, at somebody. And that's where any remotely involved person or scapegoat can be a scapegoat. The vet and the staff are handy and can be blamed even if they did no wrong. And I've told people, if you need to yell at somebody, yell at the spam call. They call you and it's nobody you know, and yet you can yell and scream at them. It's getting it out of you. Don't yell at the friendly UPS driver. He just happened to deliver a package. You find that if you need to yell and scream at somebody, pick a stranger on the phone. And I know people that have done that. And it's a good release. It's just difficult to cope with this situation right now. We just feel helpless and in despair. And then we go to the what ifs and if onlys. It's normal to wish that you'd done something different or made a different choice. If you'd given the dog the medicine before you went home, I probably wouldn't have made any difference, but we don't know that. But it wasn't made out of any logical choice. It was just, well, we'll just get the chicken and the rice and we'll go home and then I'll give her the medicine. But anger turned inward becomes guilt. And that's where we go with the what ifs and what onlys. If only I'd got to the vet sooner. If only I'd noticed that she wasn't feeling good. If only I'd noticed the symptoms earlier. What if I'd taken her to the vet 3 days earlier? Or, why did I wait till the day? Just wanting to make different choices and have the result come out differently. But it doesn't happen. And just remember what you did at the time is you did it out of love. There's no evil intentions. You want to do the best for your animals that you can. And that's all we can ask of ourselves. When we know more, we can do more or do better. But you do things from where you are in this point in time. And we always do it out of love. And physical activities will help with the anger. A friend of mine told me about, and I've read about it since, but a friend of mine told me about punching the pillow. You know, it's best to be in the house alone when you do this, but go in the bedroom or get some nice pillow and you just start punching the pillow. I mean, just start hitting it, and pretty soon all these emotions will come out. You'll be surprised. Yes, I've done it before. And my friend, she actually did it because of her husband and the relationship, the bad relationship they had. And he caught her at it one time. And she just told him, well, better the pillow than you. And that's how bad it was. But you can, okay, one time I felt really angry about something. I was talking to my husband. I said, I could just scream. And he said, well, why don't you? Well, I thought. So I looked up and I couldn't scream inside, you know, ceiling and all that, I guess. But I could scream going out when I went outside, I could scream. You know, you can shake your fist at things, at the TV if you want to. You can even yell at the TV, you know, get mad at a movie, whatever. But physical activities, you know, go to the gym, do kickboxing, do the punching the whatever bag they call it, you know, anything in there, lifting weights, the treadmill. Boy, you could really go fast on that treadmill, you know. There's just a lot of activities in the gym, or just going for walks, brisk walks, because nature heals. Just being outside and going for walks, you know. I like to walk on our farm. It's uneven and, you know, trees and grass and up and down hills and whatever. You know, walking in the gym is boring, you know. But still, if you have no place to walk but the gym, go to the gym, you know, do things.
I think we've all seen the movies of men that are angry chopping wood, right?
Yes.
That's the way to do it. Chop some wood.
Chop some wood. Yeah. Go fix fence, go do something, but not to the point that you're distracted from your grief. It's like, you know, the chopping the wood, you can cuss and yell and scream, you know, through that activity, you know. Yeah, there's a lot of things we can come up with. But the anger, you know, needs to be vented to enable you to let go of it. It's part of walking the journey, you know, of knowing that you're angry and knowing ways to get rid of it. And don't be guilty. Don't be angry at yourself for what you think you did wrong, because you always do what you think's right. Then the stage of denial, it's easily confused with shock and disbelief, but it usually develops later. But it's when that you think, you know, sure, this is a bad dream or an hallucination. I'm gonna get home and my dog's gonna greet me at the door. I'm gonna get home and my horse is gonna be there in the pasture, nickering at me. Or I walk in and the cat's gonna be on the back of the couch. But then, and we just hope everything's gonna be okay again. But then the reality sets in, you know, that my pet's really dead. It really happened. Unfortunately, this stage is usually brief. Then the next stage is sometimes depression, but that can last the whole grief journey, being depressed. You know, it's a dominating time of sadness and bittersweet memory. Our emotional strength gives out. We just don't have energy. We don't want to do anything. We need to detach for a while. It will involve our well, part of the withdrawal is sometimes, you know, if you always go out with the girls after work, or you have lunch with a friend on Saturday, or fill in the blank, and you just don't want to do it. You don't want to be social. You don't want to go out and be with happy people, you know, so you withdraw. You know, all at that point, all we care about is our pet's death and our own misery. We just want to to soak in it, if you will. But a sense of numbness and indifference affects everything. We just don't care. We don't care about anything right then. Life is overwhelming and sad. As I said, it affects your thinking. You have trouble making decisions. You have unusual physical fatigue. You either sleep more than usual or you can't sleep. You have insomnia. All those are normal. Of course, we talked about, last time about the eating, the overeating or undereating, the comfort food or the I can't eat a thing. That's normal in grief. Sometimes the depression will last a few days or a week, sometimes longer. Like I said, it can last the whole grief journey. But if it gets to a certain stage where you're really not getting through it, you're not becoming resolved to your pet's death, then you really should get professional help, a counselor or a therapist. It's not a bad thing to do. It's, I don't want to admit I went to a therapist. Well, you don't have to tell, but furthermore, it's okay. I've been to one when I was going through a real bad situation, and it turned out fine. In fact, I guess I really went to 2 different ones. But it helps, and don't be ashamed if you feel that you need to go to a therapist or a counselor, because sometimes we just need it. We need a separate, different point of view. And actually, the depression is actually a healing phase. It might be hard to realize that, but it is. It's where you're, contemplating your navel type thing. You're thinking things through. You're feeling. You can develop a new spiritual strength and a perspective that you couldn't have had before your pet died. When the depression passes, we're much closer to the resolution stage of the mourning or the grieving. And at that time, the worst is over, when you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, that you think, oh, maybe you really are going to make it through this grief. Then you're going to go on to the resolution and acceptance. Some people call it closure, but I don't, because to me, closure is like slamming a door. Doors closed, it's over. No, grief in the morning is never over. As we said last time, it can show up 20 years later. It doesn't matter. Something triggers a memory and you cry again. We call it grief burst. But it's also normal. The pet's still with us in one form or the other. I mean, they're in our heart. They can be in everything around us. When one of my sisters died, that's how I got over it, actually, is realizing she was part of everything. She was part of me. She was part of my world still. And that really helped me get through her death. But when we come to the resolution or the acceptance, we're accepting the reality that our loved one is physically gone, and recognizing that this is a new reality, that it's a permanent reality. And when I say loved one, it could be a person or a dog or a cat or a horse or an iguana. It doesn't matter. Something that you loved, somebody that you loved. And this time we start to know joy as well as sorrow. We start being able to think of the happy times and the happy memories. The good things come to you, not just the sad things that happen toward the end. It is a time of spiritual inner healing. It doesn't matter what faith you have, what religion, if you have any, but it can be a spiritual time of healing, even just with nature, with the world, if you will. And we arrive at a new normal. Nothing's going to be the same. It's a new normal. We can set new routines. We can form new relationships. With people as well as animals, make new connections. Instead of denying our feelings, we move forward. We listen to our needs. We change. We grow. We evolve ourselves. And in a lot of ways, we become a better person than we were before. Sometimes that's hard to realize, but it's true. We begin to live again, which we can't do until we've given grief its time and walked our grief journey. Now the wounds close up, they're not open wounds anymore, but as they close, they will leave a scar. It's going to be there. People say, I'm kind of off subject, but people say, well, I can't ever get another pet, but I think of it as the death of your pet leaves a hole in your heart, but there's more room in your heart for other pets, if you want. I've had people tell me, well, one lady said, well, my husband died and I'm not going to go get a new husband. My dog's died, I'm not going to go get another dog. But some people have to get another pet right then. They just have to,
I can share another story on that. It
Okay.
deals with a dog I just lost. So her name was Shiloh. Some of you might have seen her in videos in the past, but anyway, my husband, usually our dogs die from old age, and we have a little burial place that we put them here. And it was really cold. And my husband said to me, I don't think I can dig up the ground where we buried the other dogs. Would it be okay if I buried Shiloh in the garden?
Mm.
And I said, I got to think about that. And I said, I think I'm okay with that, because where the other dogs are buried, I ride by that. When I go horseback riding, it's right by one of our trails. Where the horses are buried, I ride right back that, So those two little burial spots where the dogs are buried and the horses are buried, I ride by those all the time on my horses when I go trail riding. So I think about them as I go by, but it's not emotional. So I said, I think I would be okay with her being buried in the garden, but bury her by the rose bush, which is a different story. Because when we first moved here, I wanted a rose bush in the front of our house. Well, deer love roses. And I had two, and the deer ate one till finally it didn't come back. But this other one struggled for years, and they didn't quite kill it every year. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, I said, why don't we move that rose bush into our garden, because it's fenced so the deer can't get to it. And obviously having a rose bush on the front of my house is a failed endeavor. So we moved it into the garden, where my husband promptly forgot it was there and mowed over it several times. So finally he took down a fruit tree, and there was a stump about, this tall from that fruit tree. So I transplanted the rose bush over by the stump, because I'm like, he's not going to mow over it if there's a stump there, right? So the rose bush started to grow, and it was doing okay there. So I said, bury Shiloh by the rose bush, because then maybe someday I'll get a rose. Wow. 2 weeks later, I started looking for dogs. I didn't even know what an Aussie Doodle was. I'd heard of golden doodles and labradoodles, but not an Aussie Doodle. But my sister always has the little lap dogs. Well, that's what I was raised with, and I love them. My dad has lap dogs. My mother-in-law, or my stepmom, still has lap dogs. So I wanted a lap dog, except for I don't think that's a farm dog. So I was thinking about this Aussie Doodle is kind of, they can be kind of a lap dog. She's only 20 pounds. But she's a good farm dog because of the Australian Shepherd in him. So I started looking. Well, I live in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere nearby that there are any farms. And so I'm looking online, and I had an aunt pass away, and my stepmom and I were going up to the memorial service, and it was in Omaha. And I thought, you know what? I can broaden my search, because I'm going from Arkansas to Omaha, Nebraska. Somewhere in between there, I maybe can find a new dog. Well, I found this lady who had 4 little girl Aussie Doodles, and they were all chocolate. And one of them was named Rose. And she was on my way.
Ooh. Awesome.
I said I did get my rose. And oh, by the way, this summer, that rose bush bloomed 5 times.
That's amazing. That's,
And she's a really good fun dog. And she makes me laugh. She makes me smile. And I have a totally new routine with her. So she's different, you know.
Is that
Mm.
her laying behind you,
What?
the doorway?
Oh, can you see her
Yeah, well, I can,
on
yeah.
the floor?
Head.
Yeah.
yeah, now, dear.
Yeah. I say she's a perfect farmed, oh,
You muted yourself on accident.
Yeah, you did.
sorry. I said she's a perfect farm dog because outside she takes care of the chickens and she checks in with me and helps me with the horses. But then she's the perfect lap dog in the evening because she'll settle down on the couch with me.
There you go. That's perfect. And this has been a great session. Yeah, okay, I got a couple more points. You know, we won't ever lose this special love that we had for our pet. You know, it's in it, it's inside of us, it's in our heart. But I've always tried to think, well, what lesson did this pet teach me? You know, why was he in my life? What lesson do I have to learn? And sometimes I don't get it, and I've had to have several pets come and give me the same message until finally I thought, well, I get this one now. And then I found out a lot of people do that. And that's part of our learning. You know, that's part of our spiritual development, I guess, is learning realizing what lessons our pets had to teach us. And then grief, it's like a weight if you're carrying dumbbells on your shoulders, you know, it's heavy. But as time goes on, you bear it, you know, you get stronger. It makes you stronger and more capable. So in the long run, although it hurts so much, you do become a better person because of the life you had with your pet, and then also because that they died. It's sad, but it's true. And I found out one thing, and it might not, well, it depends on losses. You know, death always entails loss, but sometimes it doesn't result in pain. If the relationship has been complete, absolutely complete relationship, then the correct response or the typical response to the death is the comfort and joy for the life you shared. And I've had that happen to me with one pet. Yeah, I was sad that he died, but man, did we have a life together. You know, couldn't ask for any more. And that's been 1 out of 30 pets for me, literally. Plus the, I won't tell how many I've got right now, but but again, it does happen. So if you have a pet die and you think, well, you know, that doesn't hurt so bad. Well, think about if your experience with that pet was complete, was truly complete. And we need homework. Well, okay, grief journal. If you start writing down how you feel now, you know, just pour your heart out into a journal and write in it, you know, every day or however often you feel the call to, but don't read it. Don't go back and reread it until maybe 3 months have gone by. And then as you reread it, you can see the progress that you've made on your grief journey. The second thing that I've always done is to make a photo album. Now, I'm from the era where we had the real photographs, you know, starting with Polaroids back then. I was so happy to have a Polaroid camera, you know. But now we have digital for the most part. But still, there's places, okay, when I would make one with the physical pictures, I'd put in an album where I could write underneath the picture what the event was, what was going on, what was special about it. And there's just a lot of joy in doing that. And of course, we're grieving, so there's going to be tears too. But just having the album there where you can flip through it then later and see the life of your life with your pet. Nowadays, you can do it online, and I've heard of the apps that do it. I can't tell you one right now, but you can make albums online, and then you can actually print them. Again, I've never done that, but I know it's out there. I've seen people do it or show the end result of their digital photographs being in an album with the story of their pet. So there's your homework. Start a grief journal and start a photo album of whatever form.
Yeah, and one thing I've done, because I like the idea of a photo album, but I've noticed that I don't flip through albums too much anymore. But I like a physical album. So what I've done is I have made a collage of photos. And you can do that on, like, I go to Walgreens. I don't know if you guys have a Walgreens where you're at, but Walgreens, Rite Aid. Yeah, exactly, Leanne.
go.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's what I think is cool, because you can get your favorite photos and put them all in an 8x10 and just have that out for you to see. And it's just lovely.
yeah.
So I've done calendars, same kind of
Yeah.
I do them for other people all the time, and every once in a while I'll do my own. I didn't do one this year. Ooh, sorry.
No,
But
apologize.
I keep thinking, man, next year's calendar is gonna be rough to do. But while you were talking, I thought, maybe I should start and do 1 month at a time.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And of course, it'll have all the animals, but Clyde will be in there too. So anyway, that's an idea too, because then it's
Yep.
with you, different one every month.
And it's also something you can keep as a treasure. Excellent. Wanda, you're being kind of quiet over there. And that's okay. If you don't want to talk, that's okay.
Yep. All great ideas, just still a little close to the surface.
Any last comments, questions, concerns? This has been an awesome session, and I am thankful for all of you for sharing. Also, it brings it to, it brings it together, one, as a group, but it also shows the reality of it for most of us. So that's pretty healing there also.
Yes, it is. Thanks. Yeah, I also thank you for sharing with us. It helps all of us by you sharing.
Mhm. All right, anything else? Maybe we should start singing a song at the end of these just to get us in a better mood. I'll think of something, okay, this week. We'll have a little chant afterwards we can do. Lighten it up a bit before we go to bed.
Not Amazing Grace, okay?
Oh, we all be crying then. We all be crying. Okay, well, thank you, ladies. Thank you so much, Nancy. And work on your homework however you're comfortable. Feel free to post on the Facebook anything that you thought was impactful or that could be helpful, or realizations that you have through the week. Feel free to throw up some photos also, or just talk about how your homework's going or things that you've noticed. Also, if you have any questions, you can shoot those to Nancy on the Facebook page too.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, you don't think the Facebook's working for you? Okay, we'll talk about it, Leanne.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.